Hello, it's me, Yalda, and I'm in Ukraine.
And me, Richard Engel, in Lisbon, back at home, just back from Israel, and welcome to the world.
Richard, and I believe happy birthday is in order. Happy birthday. I'm so pleased you're home for it.
Thank you very much. Yes, it almost never happens, but it did, and I'm here, and so I'm celebrating my birthday, and have my brother and my mother, who's 80 years old, and she just had a birthday too, and so we're all celebrating it together here in Lisbon, so it's really nice. Everyone's so not everybody's arrived yet. My brother's still coming, but it should be some good family time.
That's so nice, because as you say, it's so true. How many birthdays over the years have we spent on the road away from family? So I'm really happy for you.
And if I will say, if you have to have one holiday where you're going to miss it, birthday's fine. It's worse to miss Christmas.
Thanksgiving.
Because birthday at the end of the day, it's really just about you, right? And I can forgo that, no big deal. But the ones that mean more to the other people, for us, it's like Christmas, Thanksgiving, where it's Theo loves it. Those ones I don't like to miss. Birthday, this is great news. I'm here. All the better. Sweet. It's nice. We'll have a nice family time. But anyway, back. Let's talk about our show. Yalda, tell us why you're in Ukraine.
So, Richard, I've interviewed President Zelensky. I got this late call on Saturday night and jumped on a plane. I got here first thing on Sunday morning. And I've got to tell you, Richard, I've not heard him so frustrated towards the Americans since that infamous White House bust-up. My God, Richard, I was quite surprised by how frank and bold he was. I haven't heard him this way, in a long, long time. It was clear to me that he wanted Donald Trump to do more. That was the message he was trying to send, that he wanted Donald Trump to get tough and act now.
And we're going to unpack that whole interview. It's really exciting. The timing couldn't have been better. So congratulations, a good get. And we have some fascinating questions from our listeners. We got quite a few exciting ones. And there's one from Vladimir in Bulgaria, another one from Diane in San Diego, and we're going to answer those later.
Yeah, we've got so much to unpack, as always, on the podcast. Make sure you follow us on Spotify and Apple. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really want our audiences to grow there. And of course, we love getting your questions. As Richard was just saying, you can send us your comments, your questions, usual place. Email us at theworld@sky.uk. I'm back in Kiev. I haven't been back to Ukraine for a couple of years now. I of course, met with President Zelensky earlier in the year following that bust-up at the White House. But we came via Moldova. It's roughly about an 8-hour or 9-hour drive. So it's a long drive crossing the border. And President
People forget there's no flights.
Yeah, it's a no-fly zone here. And we arrived late in the night. We had the interview the next day, the next afternoon with President Zelensky. And he was really keen to sort of take me outside, show me a government building, one of the headquarters that had been damaged following Russian attacks on the city and across his country. Let's just have a listen.
Hi.
Mr. President, hi. Good to see you
Good
again.
to see you
How
too.
are you?
Thanks
nice to
so much.
see you. Thank you. How are you?
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Well,
of course.
thank you so much.
At a tense time, of course,
Yes,
always for
not
your
simple.
country. And the reason we wanted to meet at this point, of course, is because now they're hitting the heart of your city, the headquarters, the government building. Can you talk us through what happened there?
Yeah, we had a very tough night. Maybe, as always, I can say, but those nights was difficult because it was more than 800 shaheeds. Yes, I think 810, something like this. And plus we had, I think, about 15 missiles. Yes, especially this time at the night, and some ballistic.
What message do you think they're sending when they do that?
That they want to continue the war, and that's why they postponed, these meetings of decisions and about ceasefire. And it's not about ceasefire in any way. Yes, I don't know what is in their heads. It's difficult to understand, but we have to recognize that they don't want peace. It's understandable.
Yalda, two things that jumped out at me from that interview. One, that he took you to the Council of Ministers. So the Council of Ministry building, the Council of Ministers building, where the ministers meet to council, it was hit a few days ago. And that's right in the center, not very far from the presidential palace, not far from the main hotels. So you're striking the government center. That's one thing. And the fact that he went out there to show you is unusual. In my last interviews, he hasn't really wanted to go for walks. I've asked him to do a walk and talk, and he's reluctant to do that. So the fact that he went out there with you, I think, shows a level of interest and that he, is pretty determined to get his message out. And two, 800 shaheeds in a single night? It used to be 400. It used to be 300. Big number was 220, 230. When it went over 400, it was a story. 800? And what is it? Next time I think we're going to hear, it's going to be 1,200. And it looks like it's heading in that direction. Just that, I think, speaks volumes.
What's clear about this war, and he's describing it as becoming more complex, a different sort of generational war, that it's almost drone hell for them and the Russians. He said, we've learned something from the Russians in terms of this technology. They've learned from us. And as a result, we have become much more advanced in terms of the tech that we're using. But after that sort of walk and talk that we did, we went into the palace. We sat down for roughly about an hour. He was dressed in the way that he dresses, in the khakis that you saw there. He spoke a little bit in English and in Ukrainian mostly. And really, his invite to me and to my team meant one thing, basically, that he had a clear message, and that message was pointed towards Donald Trump mainly, and of course also to the Europeans. He wants their position made clear. He wanted to tell Donald Trump, you have the power to stop Putin. You have the power to sell me more air defense systems, and you can and should act now. Let's just have a listen to more of that interview.
Do you believe that meeting in Alaska was a mistake?
Я вважаю, що
I think
дала дуже багато
it gave a lot to Putin, and I believe if it was a trilateral meeting, we would have some result. Because Putin wanted to meet the President of the United States, Trump. He wanted to escape from political isolation, and I believe he should have paid more. He should have received a setback in this war and stop. But instead, he received de-isolation. He got photos with President Trump. He received a public dialogue. It's very important not to give Putin this space, because otherwise he won't feel compelled that he has to stop the war. Because why? I mean, if he's fighting, if he's waging the war, and everyone is trying to stop him by arguing, by asking him, but instead, force should be used. He understands force. That's his language. That's the language he understands. He doesn't speak many languages, but that's the language of force he understands, just like Russian, his mother tongue.
Do you think that Vladimir Putin is trying to manipulate and trick Donald Trump?
він точно хоче.
He definitely wants to trick the U.S.
Interesting. So you asked him, was Alaska a mistake? He doesn't say, yes, I think Trump shouldn't have hosted Vladimir Putin in Alaska. It was a terrible mistake. But then he goes on to list all the reasons why Putin got more out of it than Trump did, that Putin got recognition, that he broke his isolation, and then has just been pushing ahead on the war with no consequences. So what the F, right? I think that's the message. It's like, what the F just happened? You met there in Alaska, and you gave him all this recognition, and then he left, and he starts bombing Ukraine more heavily. What gives, guys? It was a very interesting answer. Was that his attitude?
As you say, I mean, you've seen him in action. You've sat down with him multiple times. You know, when he is feeling extreme frustration. And that's what came across in this, that he's exhausted, he's exacerbated, and he's frustrated with the lack of action. He's saying, you know, they're all going in circles. Sure, the Europeans are trying to punch above their weight here and trying to put pressure through sanctions and things like that. But the Americans need to, frankly, do more. And he doesn't want the continuation of this war. He says he's willing to do whatever it takes. Let's just have a listen, Richard, to the answer he gave me when I asked him about the trilateral summit and whether he would meet with the two men, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump.
Are you ready to meet Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin without any conditions?
I'm ready. I'm ready to meet with President Trump and Putin, but I'm ready to meet without any kind of conditions.
Are you willing to go to Moscow to do that? Because that is something that Vladimir Putin has suggested.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's not conditions. It's the situation. Russia attacked us. I can't go to the country when this country, this city, Moscow, they're attacking us.
Interesting as well. I mean, I wonder if Putin's invitation for Zelensky to come to Moscow was even really serious. I mean, I think Zelensky would probably be arrested if he got to the airport there. You know, look what's happened to other enemies of Putin when they've showed up back at the airport. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see him in Moscow anytime soon. Do you think he's making this message to sort of send a wake-up call, saying, hey, guys, we need to do something here. They're droning, they're bombing, they're attacking the offices outside my office. What gives? Do you think, is this a wake-up call kind of note?
Yeah, he's tried to wake the West up in the past, hasn't he?
But it's not working. It's not working. What I'm worried is, does he know that Trump might just not be interested in Ukraine? And Trump, whenever he speaks, he seems like, I'm doing you a favor. This is not my problem. This is your problem. And I could really be doing other things. I could be doing trade deals. I could be making billions of dollars. He could be doing whatever he's doing, having stakes at Mar-a-Lago. He doesn't feel like he should be bothering with this. So does Zelensky, by doing these wake-up calls, by doing these interviews, expressing frustration, does he think it's going to make a difference?
I think he's desperate. I think he's acutely aware that Donald Trump views this as Europe's problem. Now, for Volodymyr Zelensky, he's saying, yeah, it's terrible. Europeans shouldn't be buying Russian oil and gas. They should be doing more. But frankly, they've put 80 sanction packages in place and the Americans haven't really done anything. So we need you to keep sending us the weapons and get tough. Get tough on him now because he's terrified of these sanctions. He's terrified of being further isolated. He's terrified that we could put more pressure. But you're not doing all of these things, are you? I mean, and that is what clearly came through what I think is worrying, that when he has done this in the past, it has backfired. Donald Trump has turned on him. So if Donald Trump starts seeing this kind of messaging coming out from Volodymyr Zelensky and he starts to get bolder and bolder, you know, is he going to turn on him again?
This is where I'm wondering. Is Trump going to look at Zelensky, how ungrateful he was with Yalda Hakim from Sky. Look at that dastardly interview where he just did, where he said that my interview, or suggested that the meeting in Alaska benefited Putin more, and that I got a raw deal, and that he's trying to trick me. What does he know? We should keep to his own affairs. I could see this interview being interpreted that way.
Yeah, well, let's just have a listen, Richard, to what Zelensky says he wants.
I want to quote Donald Trump, who said, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%. And the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. I'm ready to go, he means imposing sanctions, when you are. Just say when. Do you agree with him?
Я вважаю, що Америка достатньо сильна.
I believe that the US is strong enough to take decisions of their own. I believe Donald Trump can give us air defense systems in quantity, and US has enough. I'm sure US can apply enough sanctions in order to hurt the Russian economy. Plus, Donald Trump has enough force to make Putin afraid of him. Europe, in this case, should simply be in alliance with the US. And of course, it's a big help for Americans to put pressure on Putin. But we need to understand that we just can't wait for all European countries to stop relations with Russia, whether it's oil or gas. So in this, he is right. Europe should stop purchasing fuel and gas, but we shouldn't wait. I disagree with that. I think the US is strong enough on its own. And Europe, I mean, it's many different countries. It's EU countries, other European nations outside EU, and each country has its own bureaucracy, decision-making protocols, etc. Whereas US is just one country with one vertical, system. They can make this happen quicker.
He really does sound baffled. He's like, this is the way it should be happening. This is the way it should be happening, but it's not happening. So what's wrong here? The U.S. has the capacity to make quick decisions, and then he's back and he's just getting droned and he doesn't get it. Like, this is totally in Europe's interest. This is totally in America's interest. America should be making these decisions, but they're not. What's wrong here? He's just not that into me. And I don't think he's that into Ukraine.
I think that's quite a good analogy and way to put it, and the truth probably is that Donald Trump is quite into Vladimir Putin. So when he talks about these sanctions, when he talks about threats, when he talks about imposing these tough measures on the Russians, well, he's saying it, but he isn't doing it. And he probably thought that, when he famously said, I can end this war in 24 hours, he's come to the conclusion that it's much harder than he thought. He thought, he'll come in, he'll twist Zelensky's arm, he'll tell him to give up some territory, and, he'll punish him if he doesn't. And Putin is the thug of the region, and it's his sphere of influence, and we'll all get on with it. But he didn't quite fully understand that for these countries, it's much bigger than one US president or one US president's term. For Putin, it is about Russian expansionism. For Ukraine, it's about its existence, which will and could go on for frankly, decades, beyond any US president. And I think Donald Trump will continue to make the sort of threats that he's making, say the sorts of things that he thinks, will show that he's supporting Ukraine on some level, and he will say that he's going to get tough on Vladimir Putin. But I think deep down, Putin knows and Zelensky knows that may never come and may never happen. And it will go back down to the Europeans, upping their defense spending, ensuring that when drones fly into NATO airspace, that they have the measures in place to be able to defend themselves and to, for now, defend Ukraine. Because the thing for the Europeans is they need to keep these drones within the borders of Ukraine and not let it fall into NATO, which then turns into a different kind of conflict.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, let's talk about those drones going into Poland, and we'll take some questions.
Welcome back. We've been dissecting that interview I did with President Volodymyr Zelensky, and we sat down just days after the Russian drones were shot down by Polish and NATO jets in Polish airspace. We've also seen some drones hovering into Romanian airspace. I asked President Zelensky about this, and he told me that this was Russia basically sending a very clear message to the Europeans. Don't send air defense missiles to Ukraine because, frankly, you're going to need them yourself. Well, let's take some listener questions, Richard, because after our bonus episode, we had so many people writing in. We've got this one via email. Vladimir from Bulgaria says, why do European and Ukrainian leaders still seem so desperate to keep Trump as an ally? Have they not yet accepted the idea that Europe must be prepared to face Russia one-on-one without US support?
So I think they're facing that reality. I think that reality is becoming increasingly clear, but they're not in a position to face it. It's not like you can just wake up and build a pan-European army. The infrastructure doesn't exist. Europeans, for many years, have not been spending much, in some cases barely anything, on their militaries or on their self-defense. They've relied on NATO for a self-defense, as a self-defense pack. And now they're wondering, can Trump and this organization really be counted on? And Vladimir Putin is testing his theory. Is NATO really tough? Can I poke holes in it? Is this guy all bark, no bite? And I think the Europeans are starting to get very scared. And that's why we're seeing a lot of European countries increasing their defense budgets, spending more money. But if anyone goes around Europe these days and looks at the state of local politics, it seems like European governments don't have a lot of money to spend right now. There's protests in France practically every morning. On my way over here, the flight was delayed because the air traffic controllers in France were once again on strike. And lots of countries are pretty tight right now. So they're not spending a ton. They've got to rearm. They've got to coordinate. They've got to build logistics. They have to fight with some sort of, common policy. It's not easy to replace the country that you've been depending on for your security since World War II in a couple of months or even a couple of years. It's just not.
You can't suddenly switch direction when for decades you've been relying on the United States for your security, as you say, after the Second World War. These are the alliances that have shaped the world order as we know it. It was quite extraordinary seeing that parade, in Beijing in China, where there was an attempt at reshaping the world order. And, Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to that. He said, listen, look at what we're seeing. We're seeing China, we're seeing Russia, we're seeing Kim Jong-un of North Korea standing there with the Indians, a strategic partner of the United States, all coming together, these major powers trying to reshape the world, all standing together. He talked about the Russians, the North Koreans, and the Chinese standing in unity for the war in Ukraine, because of course we've seen North Korean troops fighting for the Russians on Ukrainian territory. And he said, is that the world that we want? But frankly, when we see the language of Donald Trump and the sorts of things he's saying, including this is your problem, Europe, you resolve it yourself. We can't keep spending this because our focus, and we know that, there are those within the administration who are saying, Ukraine is futile. That's Europe's problem. Our eyes should be set on China. That is the formidable enemy. That is where we need to focus our great power competition, and that's where we should be investing on building arms and our focus. So that is the reality of where Ukraine now sits, and I found it, striking, Richard, when you once said that, frankly, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. And Ukraine, President Zelensky constantly feels this way, and that's why he's terrified. That's why he speaks up, because he knows the power of the media, he knows the power of messaging, and he is trying to use whatever tool he can at this point in time to get his message across.
And it doesn't seem to be working, and he's increasingly frustrated. So he goes to the White House, gets smacked around in the Oval Office, then he rolls over backwards. He'll sign a mineral deal under, it seems like, any condition. I mean, the terms were quite draconian. Give away all of your minerals forever, and he'll have American troops kind of take whatever they want. And Zelensky initially was rabidly opposed to this. He said, how could the language was so loose and had so many dangerous implications for Ukraine's sovereignty. He said, whatever, just sign this thing. And then what happens? Putin goes to Alaska, gets a red carpet, and riding the beast, the big limousine. There's supposed to be this trilateral meeting. It doesn't happen. The drone attacks only increase. And Vladimir Putin is now pushing his drones. He just recently did this drone assault. In our next question via email from Diane in San Diego asks about that, because what happened there was so interesting. These drones went in. NATO had to scramble jets for the first time. And she asked, this is Diane from San Diego, the new drone event in Poland changes everything. When will the Article 4 meeting occur? And will the U.S. be there? Yalda, tell us what Article 4 is. How's it going? Where that meeting is? Do you have any updates based on where you are right now?
So, Richard, Article 4 is not as serious as Article 5. So Article 5, we know, is a sort of one for all and all for one. If one is attacked, the rest come together and intervene,
collective
stand
defense.
together, collective defense. Article 4 is the sort of governing body of NATO coming together to discuss what steps and measures need to be taken if they are under threat and under attack. And Poland has asked for Article 4 to be invoked because they're saying, listen, these drones, we had to shoot them out of the sky.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
start
Sound the
cl-
alarm. Get
sound
everybody
the
together.
alarms. Something has happened here, and we need to take it incredibly seriously. We cannot normalize Russian drones provided
Russia
to
just
them
sending drones into
by
NATO.
the Iranians into NATO. Now, what the Russians are doing is they're testing NATO to see what the response will be. Frankly, so far, it's muted from the United States, barring Donald Trump saying that, maybe this was sort of somehow hovered into Polish territory. But this is now a very public debate. And the United States, rather than sort of coming to the defense of the Poles and saying this is unacceptable and we will not be, allowing for these drones to hover into NATO, they're almost saying, well, could it be an accident? Oh, we're not quite sure what's going on here. Almost as though Donald Trump doesn't have the best and biggest intelligence apparatus at his disposal and at his fingertips. So Donald Trump saying, not sure what's going on here. Now, what Volodymyr Zelensky made quite clear, and what I am hearing from some quarters in the United States, is that this is Russia sending a very clear message to the Europeans, to NATO. Do not sell your air defenses to Ukraine because, frankly, you're going to need them. And it is putting them at sort of heightened alert. Now, what Volodymyr Zelensky said to me is, listen, our technology, because we are nimble, because we are small, because we're not as bureaucratic as the rest of them, has come a long way. And I've spoken to people within the intelligence community in the United States, and they've said that intercepted, communication in Russia shows that the Russians believe they are in drone hell. So while the Russians are sending these sorts of drones, and we talked about 800 drones, the Russians themselves are seeing a swarm of drones fighting Ukraine's war for them. The other thing that Volodymyr Zelensky said that
This new drone war is hell.
Correct.
It is hell.
The other thing that Volodymyr Zelensky said, which I thought was quite fascinating, he said, it is really difficult to keep up. Every 3 months, we're seeing a new generation of these drones. These things don't cost that much, so you can update them, you can scale them. It is very different to equipment that costs millions and millions of dollars. These are just $10,000, $20,000 each, and the new generation emerges 3 to 6 months after the old one.
So what was your final question to Zelensky, the one you left him with?
Richard, the interview ended. His staff were getting quite anxious. They wanted him to move on. He was quite keen to keep talking, and then he broke out into English, and I started to ask him some more questions. And right at the end, I said to him, what message do you have to the Russian people? Thinking that he'd say, speak up against this authoritarian leader, this tyrant that has taken hold of your country. Have a listen to what he said, because I thought it was really quite stark and fascinating. Do you have a message to the Russian people?
To Russian, it's difficult to have messages to people without ears. They don't want to hear. They live in their fish tank. It's really, they think that there is their world. By the way, they have the name Russian world. It's true, and they think that they can count to bring back all the countries who've been in the Soviet Union, and they think that this is the Russian justice, yes, to bring back all of them under their rules, and to have this joint country, Russian Empire. And of course, they think that it's right. And what is terrible that young people think the same way. they are young faces, but they are really old people. They are really old Soviet people. My father, he is 77. He is much more younger than 18 years Russian girls and boys. Yes, because they are not free. They think that they live in such world, that the world is like Russia, and this is just like something very strange. So that's why what to say to them if they don't want to hear.
Very interesting. Very interesting. He didn't have that message of hope. He doesn't believe that it's just Putin. He says this is Russia, that it is not just Putin attacking Ukraine. It's the Russian people, or certainly the younger ones who don't know anybody or who live in this mentality space, that the young people are old people. They're the old Soviet thinking, the old Soviets who've been reborn into the bodies of the young Russian soldiers. And don't bother talking to them because they're on the enemy side. They think the same way. That is the sound of a man who's very depressed and very dejected. This is one of the world's most communicative heads of state during wartime. Every day he addresses his people. I've done, I don't know, by now a dozen interviews with him. You've probably done the same. You did one just now. He communicates, engages with the media, and he feels nobody's listening. Trump's not listening. The Europeans listen. They talk, but haven't been able to act yet. And the Russians, he's like, there's no hope from them. They agree with him. God, not a man who's saying like he used today in his nightly addresses, we're going to win and victory's coming around the corner. We've got allies who are with us at every turn.
Yeah, hasn't he come a long way in what he's saying and the messaging and that kind of resolve he had at the very beginning to this kind of sense of, sure, we're going to keep on fighting, but a sense of hopelessness, like I've got these partners, they keep saying the right things, as you say, but they're not acting. He then went on to say why the Ukrainian people are different. He said, people ask, why do we want to join the EU? He said, we have a European mindset. We are European. We're not like the Russians. We want to be free. He almost talked about feeling sorry for the Russian people because their minds are not free. So a tense time for this country, and we'll have to see how things pan out, how that message that he's trying to now sell is received by Donald Trump, by the Europeans. And they're all going to be, Richard, at the UN General Assembly next week. I'll be there, covering the statements made by these world leaders across the board.
So another trip upcoming for you. What are you going to leave Kyiv, drop your bags at home, and then head straight to New York?
Yes, I will. We weren't.
I feel bad now. I'm at home. I'm leaving you
home,
after this, and it's my birthday. I'm gonna have cake later. I'm gonna play with anyway.
Well deserved for you.
Thank you. Great to see you today. Congratulations on the interview with Zelensky. Fascinating stuff, and I'm so glad we were able to do this because sometimes when you watch a clip on TV and you hear it, that's interesting, and we do that. But I like when we can have this opportunity to really go through something, and hopefully the listeners do as well, digest it, understand it, spend some time with it, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope others have as well.
Thank you so much, Richard. Really good to see you, and thank you so much to our listeners for listening again this week.